There's been some changes between the gameplay we saw back in 2011 and the gameplay we saw at E3 2013, and though we'll mostly be focusing on the gameplay from the most recent version of the game, there is some potentially valuable information to be gathered from the 2011 footage, as well as Final Fantasy XV's sister series, Kingdom Hearts. We'll start off with the 2013 footage, though. First things first, Noctis is our main character, but you do have the ability to play as other characters in your party, presumably at any time. However, your party members are much more like supporting roles than leaders, and they play into the philosophy of choosing the right tools at the right time, and that seems to be what the entire game is built around. You see, Noctis has the ability to switch between a wide variety of weapons nearly instantaneously. He can summon anything from short swords, broadswords, buster swords, daggers, lances, and use them in combat. Sure, they're all melee weapons and they're all fundamentally designed for slashing and stabbing, but they're still very different tools that all play very differently. Ask anyone who's played a Platinum game or a Devil May Cry or really any decent character action game, a different weapon can completely change the gameplay, both in the way that you approach enemies and in the amount of control you have over the pace of the battle. As you can see here, Noctis' larger swords allow him to do exceptionally more damage, as well as block exceptionally bigger attacks, but they take a long time to wind up and leave him open to enemy attack. In this clip, Noctis is winding up for an attack with his Buster Sword, and an enemy gets a hit in on him, which staggers Noctis and causes his weapon to disappear. Same with this clip here, except that instead of getting staggered, he's knocked away. On the other hand, his knives allow him to attack at an extremely high speed, but they deal very little damage. The lance significantly extends his range and apparently allows for a sort of ground pound move, but I would guess that it's not the most effective weapon for a straight sword fight because it probably has a very slow, awkward combo. Noctis' party members don't have the ability to switch their weapons around. They're all limited to one weapon at a time. However, each of them has something that Noctis doesn't. For instance, Gladiolus here can use a Buster Sword much like the one that Noctis uses, but he's stronger and more comfortable with it, so he's able to attack faster than Noctis can when using a similar weapon. Prompto, who uses a weapon completely unique to him: guns. Hopefully I don't have to explain why guns play fundamentally differently from swords. It seems that unlike many of the enemies who mostly wield machine guns, Prompto is limited to semi-automatic sidearms. Like I said earlier, it seems like the entire game will be built around knowing who to use and when to use them. In Kingdom Hearts, you're unable to switch to your party members because there's basically no need. Some of them are more magic-centric, some of them are more physical, but none of them do anything that Sora can't. There's no real need to take control of them, especially because they're ultimately expendable. They can be knocked out, and while that's certainly bad news for the player because there's no one to draw the enemy's fire or heal you, they're gonna get back up in a minute or two, so it's a small loss. However, in this game, your party members function the same way that party members in most RPGs do. If they run out of HP, they'll faint, and they'll only come back if you can revive them. You know, just like most RPGs. This is because the party members in this game are inherently more valuable than the likes of Donald or Goofy. While at a surface level, none of them do anything special, with the obvious exception of Prompto, simple stuff like swinging a sword faster is really important from a structural standpoint in a game like this. None of the party members, other than Noctis, are diverse or capable enough to carry a battle on their own, but when Noctis is with them, they become more valuable assets for the player to use. For instance, Prompto's offensive capabilities seem somewhat limited, but if the 2011 footage is anything to go by, he can stun-lock enemies pretty easily, as well as trigger some environmental hazards. A character like Gladiolus is clearly better suited to fighting a large monster like this one-on-one because he can swing a Buster Sword faster. Noctis is still very much the player character. I would wager that you'll spend the majority of your time playing as him, and only switch roles when you want to carry out specific support actions or set up a combo. Noctis has another important ability aside from his sword switching and magic. He can teleport around the environment. The exact limits of this ability aren't perfectly clear because some of the gameplay footage we've been seeing was clearly modified for the purposes of the trailers. Observe, in the first trailer we can see this meter decrease every time Noctis teleports, but in the gameplay trailer he can teleport as much as he wants to without depleting that meter. Nomura already commented that this gameplay trailer shows an exceptionally high-leveled Noctis, so I suspect that this teleportation ability was modified for the purposes of the trailer. That being said, there's still quite a bit to see. The first and most obvious point is his point-to-point teleportation. You look at a highlighted point on the map, press a button, and bam, you're there. These teleportations can be both long range and short range, and it's unclear how specific these points are. For instance, Noctis teleports from enemy to enemy in this trailer, and it's not clear if the enemies are just dumb enough to sit on top of teleportation points, or if the enemies themselves have been made teleportation points. Similarly, Noctis teleports across a small room here, allowing him to drop-kick this loser in the face. It seems like a completely contrived teleportation point that would only be useful if the guard was right there. I'll be honest, it makes me kind of wary about some of the design aspects of this game. We'll have to wait and see more. There are other ways that his teleportation plays into the game, though. Noctis has a super move of some kind called Link Form. When he uses it, we can see the option Link Form in the command menu light up. This ability allows him to teleport around enemies and hit them with a flurry of attacks. This would presumably cost him some meter to use, since it looks like it's unblockable. Interestingly, it also appears that Link Form can trigger cinematic attacks. The first 2 times we see it, Noctis just starts teleporting around and attacking, nothing all that special. But at the end of the trailer, we first see Noctis jump up onto a monster's horns before launching his attack. The action Link Form is clearly pressed right before he does this, so canned cinematic animations may sometimes be triggered when using this ability. Additionally, and perhaps most interestingly, his teleportation ability can be used as a dodge. Anybody who's played Kingdom Hearts knows that a surefire way to avoid many of the bosses is to simply roll around the map infinitely until whatever area attack they're using stops, and then move in and hit them before dodging around some more. The invincibility frames on dodge rolls in Kingdom Hearts are absolutely absurd. It seems like the teleportation ability may have presented an interesting way to get around this design flaw. I would like to hope that using Noctis's teleport as a dodge would burn some of his meter. We don't know this for sure, but for now let's assume that it does. If it turns out that his teleport dodges don't burn meter, then please disregard everything I'm about to say. Noctis can use both physical, normal dodges like these and the teleportation dodges. It raises the question of why anyone would ever want to use the physical dodges though, since the teleportation ones seem significantly more powerful. Obviously, it's hard to get hit when you're teleporting, and you also cover significantly more ground. Some of Noctis's physical dodges are absolutely pathetic comparatively. However, if his teleport dodges are limited, then this creates a very interesting dynamic. The teleport dodge allows Noctis to close ground on enemies instantly. As seen here, Noctis basically skips an entire wall of enemies using it. Of course, we are assuming that this dodge also burns your teleportation meter. Using it would impair your movement abilities, and you wouldn't be able to do it more than a few times in a row. A physical dodge, however, would probably be available anytime that you want it. It's like the parry, or something that requires more skill and finesse and isn't sure to work out. The one thing that confuses me is that some of these dodges seem substantial, with Noctis rolling quite a ways away from where he started, whereas others look like a mere sidestep. Again, we'll have to wait and actually play it ourselves to see how the system works, but I think it has the potential to fix one of the biggest problems with the gameplay of Kingdom Hearts, and in fact the gameplay of many action games. However, there are some problems with the teleportation that we've been shown so far, or rather, with what we haven't been shown and the things that don't add up. For instance, here we see Noctis teleport, and it looks like he's going to head for that point right there, but he actually ends up teleporting higher up, out of his field of view. This could be some clever editing or something, or it could be evidence that this gameplay is a little bit more fake than we were led to believe. All in all, there's a lot of stuff we haven't seen with these systems yet, so it's difficult to make a judgment call either way with parts of it. There's still more to see in this gameplay, though. Here, we can see that when Noctis has critical health, it actually affects his movement significantly. We only see it for a few seconds, but it looks like having a character's health down in the red actually makes them move significantly slower. Additionally, there are several parts of this trailer where we see Noctis battered around or stumbling along with explosions or other actions in the world around him. There's another ability we see in this trailer that's a bit more confusing. Here, projections of Noctis's weapons appear in front of him. They look different graphically from the weapons that spin around him when he teleports them, though, which makes me wonder if they're an unfinished part of the game. What exactly they do is unclear, but it appears to be some sort of auto-counter ability. If this is triggered by the player, my guess would be that it either burns MP or meter, but that if you're hit with a physical attack with low priority, you can cancel it and perform a move that staggers the enemy. On the other hand, if this isn't a player-triggered ability, it's possible that what we're seeing is a new version of the reaction command system introduced in Kingdom Hearts 2. For those unfamiliar, the reaction command system involved triangle prompts appearing during combat and allowing the player to perform some special action, usually an action specific to that type of enemy. Basically, QuickTime events. The only other thing I can mention from the 2013 gameplay is that the game might have some kind of adaptive cover system. I'm not sure if that's actually a term or not. Let's say it has a cover system that isn't sticky. If you don't know what a sticky cover system is, think Gears of War or Uncharted. You go up to a piece of cover, you press a button, and bam, your character gets up against it in pretty much the perfect position to avoid getting shot. It seems like this game has sort of kind of a cover system, but it doesn't require a button press to enter, and it doesn't require a button press to leave either. I'm not sure what triggers it or why it exists, but it's there. So, yeah. That's all there is to say on that one. Also, there's Cactar there. Proof positive, true Final Fantasy game. If we go back to the 2011 footage, we can see a few more points of interest. We actually see straight gameplay from the perspective of other characters, for one thing. We also see Noctis using vehicles and turrets in the environment. Here, he hijacks a cannon and uses it against his opponents, and here he actually rides inside what looks a bit like a Magitech walker from Final Fantasy VI, and uses it to fight against ground troops and other walkers. We did see one of these walkers in the 2013 gameplay, but Noctis doesn't get inside of it, so we don't know if this feature has been carried over to the new version of the game. Anyway, that's all we can really talk about from what little gameplay we've seen, or at least everything that's worth talking about. Keep in mind that a lot of the stuff we've just covered here was purely speculative, and the final systems of the game might not work in the way that I described. Furthermore, it could just turn out that the game flat out plays bad. The fact that some of the hits are really janky makes me hopeful that most of what we've been shown here is real, at least to some extent, but it's always possible that they've falsified parts of the footage. But really, at the end of the day, it's impossible to know if all of the systems we see here are any good, or even if the game controls well. We'll only know those things when we play the game for ourselves. Don't get overhyped, don't rush out and pre-order the game. I'm not saying that the gameplay we've seen so far looks great, and I'm not even saying the gameplay looks good. I will, with some hesitation, say that the game looks promising. But as of right now, the actual quality of the final product is still anyone's guess. Also, yes, the main character looks like Sasuke from Naruto. You can stop leaving comments about it.